YAH. Please fill me with the Ruach HaKodesh, that I may speak your written words with boldness to those who listen. I ask all these things in Yeshua HaMashiach's name. Amen. We'll start with the Shema, listen and obey. Children of Yah, pay careful attention and respond. Yehovah is our power and authority. Yehovah works in unity with himself, and you shall act upon your love to Yehovah with your power and authority, with your thoughts and mind, with your entire body, with all the muchness that you have. Hebrews chapter 3. Therefore, brothers whom God has set apart, who shall, in the call from heaven, think carefully about Yeshua, whom we acknowledge publicly as God's emissary and as Kohen Gadol. He was faithful to God, who appointed him just as Moshe was faithful in all God's house. But Yeshua deserves more honor than Moshe, just as the builder of the house deserves more honor than the house. For every house is built by someone, but the one who built everything is God. Also, Moshe was faithful in all God's house as a servant, giving witness to things God would divulge later. But the Messiah, as son, was faithful over God's house. And we are that house of his, provided we hold firmly to the courage and confidence inspired by what we hope for. Therefore, as the Ruach HaKodesh says, today, if you hear God's voice, don't harden your hearts, as you did in the bitter quarrel on that day in the wilderness when you put God to the test. Yes, your fathers put me to the test. They challenged me, and they saw my work for 40 years. Therefore I was disgusted with that generation. I said, their hearts are always going astray. They have not understood how I do things. In my anger I swore that they would not enter my rest. Watch out, brothers, so that there will be in any one of you an evil heart lacking trust, which could lead to apostatize from the living God. Instead, keep exhorting each other every day, as long as it's called today, so that none of you will become hardened by the deceit of sin. For we have become sharers in the Messiah, provided, however, that we hold firmly to the conviction we begin with, right through until the goal is reached. Now, where it says, today, if you hear God's voice, don't harden your hearts, as you did in the bitter quarrel. Who were the people who, after they heard, quarreled so bitterly? All those whom Moshe brought out of Egypt, and with whom has God disgusted for 40 years. Those who sinned, yes, they fell dead in the wilderness. And to whom was it that he swore that they would not enter his rest? Those who were disobedient. So that they were unable to enter because of lack of trust. Heavy. The author pulls a lot again from the Tanakh. First, faithful. Moshe was faithful in all God's house. That comes from Numbers 12:7. Numbers 12:7. But it isn't that way with my servant Moshe. He is the only one who is faithful in my entire household. Next, house, 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 3 times. Moshe is faithful in all God's house. Servant was faithful, God's house, house. Today, if you hear God's voice, don't harden your hearts, as you did in the bitter quarrel, on the day in the wilderness when you put God to the test. Yes, your fathers put me to the test. They challenged me, and they saw my work for 40 years. Therefore, I was disgusted with that generation. I said, their hearts are always going astray. They have not understood how things are. They don't understand how I do things. In my anger, I swore that they would not enter my rest. The author pulls from Psalm 95, 7 through 11. Psalm 95, 7 through 11. For he is our God, and we are the people in his pasture, the sheep in his care. If only today you would listen to my voice. If only today you would listen to his voice. Don't harden your hearts as you did in Meribah, as you did on that day at Massah in the desert, when your fathers put me to the test. They challenged me, even though they saw my work. For 40 years I loathed that generation. I said, this is a people whose hearts go astray. They don't understand how I do things. Therefore I swore in my anger that they would not enter my rest. Next, today, hardened. Today, if you hear God's voice, don't harden your hearts, as you did in the bitter quarrel. That's, again, Psalm 95, 7 and 8. For he is our God, and we are the people in his pasture, the sheep in his care. If only today you would listen to his voice. Don't harden your hearts as you did in Meribah, as you did on that day at Massah in the desert. Heard, quarreled bitterly, disgusted for 40 years, wilderness, swore that they would not enter his rest. Enter. That's all on that one. And he just keeps going back to the Psalm 95. Okay. How can we learn to love our Creator after reading Hebrews 3? We can learn quite a bit. We can know that YAH sets apart who will share in the call from heaven. Aim to think carefully about Yeshua, whom we acknowledge publicly, who is YAH's emissary and Kohen Gadol. Trust that Yeshua was faithful to YAH, who appointed him, just as Moshe was faithful in all YAH's house. Know that Yeshua deserves more honor than Moshe. Aim to be faithful as Moshe was faithful in all YAH's house, as a servant giving witness. Trust that the Messiah, as son, was faithful over YAH's house, and that YAH's chosen is the house of his. Provided we hold firmly to the courage and confidence inspired by what we hope for. Trust that as the Ruach HaKodesh says, today if you hear YAH's voice, soften your hearts and aim not to put YAH to the test. Aim for your heart to stay on the path YAH has for you. Aim to understand and trust how YAH does things. Aim to enter YAH's rest. Aim to have a good heart full of trust, so that there will be no room for you to be led to apostatize from the living God. Aim to exhort, advise, call upon each other every day, as long as it's called today, for the purpose of none of us becoming hardened by the deceit of sin. Know that we have become sharers in the Messiah, provided we hold firm to the conviction we begin with, right through until the goal is reached. Aim to obey YAH at all costs. Aim to trust and keep your trust so that you will enter YAH's rest. How can we love others as Yeshua loves us? We can aim to exhort daily so that no one will become hardened by the deceit of sin. Produce spiritual fruit: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, humility, and self-control. And how can we bear one another's burdens? We can help others to hold firm to their conviction we began with until the goal is reached of entering YAH's rest. In the Aaronic blessing, Yehovah will kneel before you presenting gifts, and he will guard you with a hedge of protection. Yehovah will illuminate the wholeness of his being towards you, bringing order, and he will provide you with love, sustenance, and friendship. Yehovah will lift up the wholeness of his being, look upon you, and will set in place all you need to be whole and complete. Amen.